Hello. Welcome back to the channel. I hope my mic is working. Yeah, it's working. I hope you guys are having a great one. I hope you guys are having an amazing day. Hope you guys, welcome back to the channel. We got philosophy. Let's get excited, man. I know you here. If you're watching this, you must be into philosophy. So let's get a quick rundown. Explain and compare nihilism versus existentialism versus absurdism. I know absurdism, something about existentialism kind of has to do with absurdism, but absurdism that's Camus' thing, right? Like Albert Camus, he made that shit popular. I think. I'm not sure. I mean, of course, he must not be the only one like in that shit. But like when I think of absurdism, I think Camus. Of course, existentialism has a lot of people in it. Some people which have even had some very much a critique of nihilism. Like, I was listening to this Philosophize This podcast, Stephen West, second video today, and I can't make this. You guys are gonna think that I'm being paid. I'm being paid to say that. I'm not being paid. I'm not being paid to promote Stephen West's podcast. Okay, I just been listening to it recently, and I was listening to the Simone de Beauvoir jaunt. Right. By the way, responsibility. Part 3 on that. Probably my favorite podcast episode of all time. Maybe. That shit had me on the edge of my seat while I was working, dog. But she actually had very much of a critique of nihilism, where she was saying like, well, the nihilist man is not free, right? She said that on like a scale of the freedom that somebody has, of course, existentialism is the belief that people are radically free or whatever. It is like on a scale of freedom, the nihilist, she doesn't think they're free. They're above a few other people. They've acknowledged the sort of the absurdity and the ambiguity of life, right? People who are not free are the people that just, they just conform to everything. They limit themselves. They try to shorten and simplify what they are. They make oversimplifications of everything just because they don't like the ambiguity. They say, well, I'm just an American. Well, I'm just a Chinese man. Well, I'm just a patriot. Well, I'm just a Democrat. I'm just an evangelist, right? I'm just anything. They give themselves a title, and then they go and they stick to it. It might be given to them. They might choose it. It doesn't matter, right? You have the sub-man. You have the I forgot the terms already, but the subman is the least free of them all, and it's just that guy that's just apathetic about everything, doesn't really find anything interesting, doesn't care about anything. But it's also like the freest man who she says is not free, but is very close to free, is Nietzsche, and he's an existentialist, and she technically kind of falls into the existentialism category, but she wouldn't really. Many people don't. She probably wouldn't even consider herself much of a philosopher or an existentialist. I don't know, but she would consider Friedrich Nietzsche like probably about as free as it get without being absolutely free, because one of the dualities is that you belong to the state. Not you belong to the state, but you're a part of the state that you live in. You're part of your communities. You're as much as you're an individual, you're also a member of a state. As much as you're you're this, you're also a this. As much as you're a subject, you're an object. As much as you're matter, you're also a mind. As much as you're this, there's a lot of dualities. And he feels like Nietzsche is not accounting for the fact that, we're in an interbeing with everything, right? Like we are the universe coming alive. She didn't say this. This is my take on it, right? It's like we're the universe looking back at itself. It's matter coming alive, being conscious. Matter being conscious of itself, and it's like, well, when you have that, you have to realize that you're also an interbeing, because even the law of thermodynamics says that matter can't be created or destroyed, whatever. And it's like, well, we're all a part of the same shit. We're all a part of the same shit. So you have to realize, well, you also you're in a duality with a lot of things, and you got to also care for those things. If she feels Friedrich Nietzsche does not care about those, she feels she's a little too selfish. Though we do understand everybody's selfish. And we're also self-deceiving to make yourself think that you're not actually that selfish, and to make that you're operating under unselfish ways for unselfish purposes. But everybody's just selfish. No matter how selfless the act that you may be doing, it's likely for some selfish reason. It's like people completely have a weird, like, I feel like people don't understand what it means to be selfish. They have a bad connotation to it. Everybody's selfish. It's not even a bad thing. I'm not gonna hold you. But it's like she feels she's too selfish, because he should be caring more about maybe willing the freedom of others. That's what it is. Have your will to freedom. But you should also be willing the freedom of others. Of course, she would say that. She was like a feminist. She was big on, social movements and making things better for the group because, well, you know, you run into being with them. Without them, you can't do a lot of what you do. So she's right. I agree with her. I agree. Completely agree. 5 minutes. We're not going to pause it then. We're just going to let this play out because this video would be too long. I'm sorry. Had to get that introduction in there. You know, I'll put a disclaimer somewhere. I don't know. I'll put it in the comments. Maybe if you check the comments, you'll know that I started. 5 minutes. Jesus Christ.
In the 19th and 20th centuries, modernity came into its fullness, and with this maturation, the vestiges of the religious worldview began to fall away, revealing a crisis of meaning that we've come to call nihilism. This emergence of nihilism prompted philosophers to ask in earnest once again the
the nihilist. Quickly, 3 seconds. The nihilist, she thought that, you know, they just, you know, they had arrived at the right, you know, thing. Like, yeah, you realize the ambiguity. You realize that there's not really any objective, you know, pinpointed, like, given meaning to any of it. You're not giving a meaning. And, of course, to be able to go through anything in life, you know, the way that you overcome it, you know, you see this in Man's Search for Meaning, you know, logotherapy, the guy that went through the Holocaust, and it's just like, you see it everywhere. In order to overcome anything, you must believe that there's a meaning to it, right? Even in the Myth of Sisyphus from Albert Camus, he must have like really been focused on the task. He must have thought that the task was meaningful to be able to keep pushing that boulder, right? It must have been, he was gonna say, well, I'm gonna absolutely dedicate my life to this boulder, and I'm not going to try to reason it out why I'm doing it too much. I'm just going to do this thing just for the sake of doing it, right? And that's what absurdity is. But the nihilist, he will think, well, you know, all of that is true, and since there's no meaning, well, my automatic thought process, you know, my automatic conclusion to it all is that nothing is meaningful, right? And then therefore that's what, you know, you're giving yourself that meaning. That is your purpose now, is the fact that you're not going to find anything meaningful, and you're going to sit in the fucking sofa. You're going to sit in the living room there, you know, just sad, you know, just almost apathetic, right? But it's like, you're just going to sit there drowsy. You're just going to sit there bummed out about the fact that you're not going to do anything. You're just going to be there sad, like just bummed out about how meaningless life is. It's like, no, you can go and find meaning. You're not free. The nihilist isn't free. The nihilist has got the right idea, but you came to the wrong conclusion. Okay, like you may be working with the right kind of mathematics, but your answer ain't correct. You know, your answer is wrong. You got the wrong answer because somewhere in the equation you just went wrong. You went wrong, okay?
Since cliched philosophical question, what is the meaning of life? Out of this renewed engagement with meaning, 3 trends emerged. There was the root problem, nihilism, the realization that there is no objective meaning to our lives, and wrestling with this problem, we have 2 responses, existentialism and absurdism. In this episode, we're going to explore what nihilism is and how these 2 schools of thought have attempted to manage the crisis it represents.
Living Philosophy, inaugural video from this guy.
For the religious individual, life has an objective meaning. In the Judeo-Christian traditions, the history of this world is bookended by God's creation on one end and Judgment Day with heaven and hell on the other. For the Buddhists and Hindus, there is a story of karma and the endless cycle of birth and rebirths that it results in. The end point of this system is not a heaven-hell dichotomy, but liberation, known as moksha in Hinduism and nirvana in Buddhism. In these Eastern and Western systems of belief, humanity has a privileged place in reality. But as the modernist worldview comes to its full fruition, it casts off the residual holdovers from the religious mindset, and the objective meaning dissolves. As we develop a better and better model of reality and no longer need to rely on divinities to provide an explanation of the world, we begin to jettison these divinities and the beliefs attached to them. As Nietzsche has pointed out, Christianity prized truthfulness and sharpened this virtue in its believers only to fall on the very sword it had honed. In the 19th century, modernity lurched into the secular mode with a number of explosive works. In the 1830s, David Strauss published his Life of Jesus. This book became a controversial literary phenomenon that eroded the belief in the Bible as a historical book. 1841 saw the publishing of Ludwig Feuerbach's The Essence of Christianity, that explored the idea that God was a psychological projection of humanity. Feuerbach, whose name is German for fire brook, was a major influence on Karl Marx, who said that there is no other road for you to truth and freedom except that leading through the brook of fire. Following Strauss and
Ain't a lot about what Marx was teaching. Ain't that like another, real world like theory? Ain't that socialism? Like a real world theory? Like, ain't that a kind of real world theory? Like something to believe in? Like that you. What was I need to shut up. What was that shit on the podcast? Oh, I'm trying to remember it. So, Stephen West says something about what the fuck people like, how it's sort of seemed like a real world theory of, we have a existential dread. We're gonna figure out a way to fix that problem. Was that Marx or is that capitalism? I don't know.
Feuerbach, the real
said.
stake in the heart of the religious narrative was the publication of Darwin's On the Origin of Species in 1859. This cultural trend culminated at last in the catastrophic event that Nietzsche's madman talks about in The Gay Science. Nietzsche's madman, like the anecdotal Diogenes, lights a lantern in the bright morning and goes into the marketplace searching for God, only to be mocked by the townsfolk with all the sarcasm of triumphant modernism. And then the madman gives a speech to the people that echoes God's speech at the climax of the Book of Job.
Watch this. I can show you how to get the sweetest deals online when you shop from major retailers like Amazon and Target.
Man, shut the fuck up.
Whither is God, he cried. I shall tell you. We have killed him, you and I.
God is
all
dead.
of us are his murderers. But how have we done this? How are we able to drink up the sea? Who gave us the sponge to wipe away the entire horizon? What did we do when we unchained this earth from its sun? Whither is it moving now? Whither are we moving now? Away from all suns? Are we not plunging continually? Backward, sideward, forward, in all directions? Is there any up or down left? Are we not straying as though through an infinite nothing? Do we not hear anything yet of the noise of the grave diggers who are burying God? Do we not smell anything yet of God's decomposition? Gods too decompose. God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we, the murderers of all murderers, comfort ourselves? What was holiest and most powerful of all that the world has yet owned has bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe this blood off of us? This passage from Nietzsche is like the clarion call of nihilism. It proclaims the undermining of the objective values. Backward, sideward, forward, up, down, all these are the ways we orient ourselves in the external world. The death of God throws our entire relationship to reality, our life's compass, into disarray.
Yeah,
to put it more philosophically,
because religion is that which is the most fundamental thing, right? It's just like that's super fundamental, and that's why I always was super interested in figuring out the truth, was because I realized how fundamental this shit is. This shit is the driving force behind a lot of things, a lot. And it's like, well, when you make such a thing, a catastrophe, a disastrous thing might happen. Because you can't just completely you can't do it too quickly. You can't too quickly get rid of something, right? Like, it's like if tomorrow we were to completely change capitalism and we were to adopt, socialism or something else or something. It's like, well, that would fuck up way too much shit. It's just like, you can't make too quick of a change. Like, it hasn't really happened. Motherfuckers are still Christian. A lot of motherfuckers still believe in God. More motherfuckers are born every day that are going to go on to believe in God for the rest of their lives. Like, it's not over. And the fact that it hasn't happened like that is maybe why you don't see such a catastrophe. But maybe some people might argue that there is some here and there. But it's just like, you don't need God. The way that, remember Bobby Azarian? I told you about the Bobby Azarian shit. Like, you don't need to, believe it. Like, you don't have to have a story of a God to believe that there's something bigger than yourself. You are a part of something bigger than yourself by nature. Look at the cosmos. That shit exists for some reason. It doesn't have to be a God that created it. Look at the fact that it exists. Look at the fact that we exist. We're a part of something bigger that we cannot comprehend. Just because we can't comprehend it doesn't mean that we're not a part of something bigger than ourselves. Doesn't mean the fact that I'm not conscious matter aware of itself, talking to a fucking camera right now. Like, people are watching this through technology, whatever. Like, it's crazy shit. Why do you feel like you need a God? It's just a story. There's actually a crazier thing than this story going on. There's actually something that we belong to, something even greater than you might possibly be able to create. We belong to something greater than all of it, bro. Not because of some divine creator, but not necessarily. Like, you maybe argue, but I'm saying it's not a person. Like, it's not like something just created itself and then just decided to put us all together in its own image. Like, no. But I mean, something's going on out there, and it's bigger than you think, and it's like, well, But it's also, well, morality. I mean, did religion really create morality, though? You know, fruit for thought. Let me know. You know, leave a comment down below. What do you think? Do you think religion created morality? I think it very much enforced it. I think people very much do the shit. Like, they very much do a lot of shit because they feel like they have to. But I feel like that's forcing. Like, you know, when you force somebody, it's just like, it's not even genuine. But even if that was the case, I mean, at least, you know, if you have people, doesn't matter why they're doing it. But if you have people doing something good, then I'm not going to complain. But it's like, well, that hasn't stopped anybody. You act like religious people don't be murdering people. You act like religious people are exempt from murdering anybody. You act like no religious man has never murdered or raped somebody, right? And it's just like, that's just, you just basically have given them another layer, another reason not to do bad stuff. But they already kind of realize that they don't want to do bad stuff. We live in a society. We live in an interbeing. We live in a system. We live in a system. Like, you don't need religion for there to be morals. We have morals. Okay, we don't need religion to have morals. It didn't create morals. At least I don't think so. I could be fucking wrong. I could be stupid. But, like, I mean, I haven't looked too much into it, but I really wouldn't say that religion created morals. Like, what, how?
God was the foundation of external values and of objective meaning. Without God, without divinity, the external world lacks a telos. It lacks a purpose and a meaning by which we can orient ourselves. The objective ground of morality and of human purpose has fallen away, and this vacuum is disastrous. And so, this is the crisis that nihilism speaks to. By fully leaning into the implications of biblical criticism and the insights of Copernicus and Newton and later Darwin, reality is no longer geocentric and anthropocentric, and with the lawful universe that Newton began to expose and the evolutionary story that Darwin uncovered, there's no need for a god, except maybe in the narrow, denuded role of Aristotle's uncaused cause, or as the animating spark that set life in motion. The material explanations for the external world proved far more effective than the religious ones, and so these religious stories were condemned to the trash heap. The trouble was that these dodgy religious explanations were attached to the grounding of human morality and meaning. The death of God heralded a meaning crisis. This is the root problem out of which existentialism and absurdism grew. Before we look at the response of each school, it's worth addressing why there is so much confusion around the difference between existentialism and absurdism. The trouble lies with the usage of the term existentialism itself, which is used more or less broadly depending on the writer. In some definitions, Camus and his absurdism are sub-schools of existentialism, whereas for others they are completely distinct. Existentialism often includes thinkers in the 19th century, such as Dostoevsky, Kierkegaard and Nietzsche, who far predate the origination of the term in the mid-20th century. To complicate matters further, you have people who are often categorized as existentialists, such as Heidegger and Camus, who publicly declared that they were not existentialists, and so the exact definition of existentialism is a bit nebulous. For the purposes of this episode, existentialism
Jean-Paul Sartre
is going to center on the philosophy of Jean-Paul Sartre. Sartre is the philosopher most synonymous with existentialism for a number of reasons. He not only defined the term existentialist and coined many of its key terms and phrases, but he was one of the few philosophers who self-identified as an existentialist. In tackling the problem of nihilism and the absence of objective meaning, Sartre's existentialist response was to first define what it is to be human, and this is where his famous phrase of existence precedes essence comes into play. Essence is a term that goes back to ancient Greek philosophy. For Aristotle, the essence of a thing is its defining characteristics. This notion of essence is tied up with the related idea of telos, which is the purpose of a thing. So the essence of a knife is to cut, the essence of a cup is to hold liquid, and the essence of a boat is to sail on water. In the classical view of philosophy, the essence of a thing precedes its existence. If a cup can't hold liquid, it's not a cup, since it is lacking the aspect that is essential to it. But this program is inverted by Sartre, who says that existence precedes essence. Before the figurative death of God, it would have been said that our essence precedes our existence. Humans had a specific purpose. For Aristotle, we were essentially rational. For Christians, we were a fallen people that must aspire to salvation. But with nihilism, the bottom fell out.
Bro, what? Damn! I had thought, oh shit. That was something that I had in my mind, and I didn't really have the words to describe it. Yeah. They did think that. They did think essence came before the shit. Right? We were made to be perfect, and then Adam and Eve, you know. Oh my god, who told me that, bro? Oh my god. Oh. That shit bothered me so much. Somebody was like, we were talking about something always unrelated to religion. And then they're just like, well, we were made to be perfect. The reason we all die, the reason we're mortal. You tell me the story like if it's true. Like if it's an actual story. You motherfuckers, you actually believe it. Like, the way that I see it no different than a story of, like, Zeus. I see it no different than the Chronicles of Narnia. And you motherfuckers are talking to me like it's the... my God, it's something. I was there, too. I was there. I thought so. I thought it was... Yeah. But at least I was, like, skeptic enough of what the fuck I believed. At least I was skeptical enough to question it. Like, I don't know why people don't question this shit. Why? Because, well, they're just not built like me. Motherfuckers can't deal with the ambiguity like me, bro. Motherfuckers can't deal with the skeptic. They rather just be blind to the truth. They rather just have blind faith, which is bad faith. All of that shit, man. But it's like, damn, the way he said that. Essence precedes the shit. Motherfuckers taught that? No.
Out of these illusions, and what was revealed is that there is no objective meaning. There is no purpose that exists that is greater than humanity.
Right, like as if we were built to be great and all of a sudden we did something that we weren't. So Eve did something that is not of her essence. So she was created with an essence, and then she came. And then when she was here, she did something that goes against her essence. So it's like if I had a cup that held liquids, all of a sudden it went and it couldn't hold liquid without me doing anything. It just didn't hold liquid. And now it had a cup right here with soda. It's holding liquid. All of a sudden, boom, it can't hold liquid no more. Can't hold liquid. I didn't do anything. I didn't, like, crush it. I didn't, like, do anything. Right? And it's like, well, that's what you're doing. You might say, well, the snake told her to do... that's not me crushing it. Because I'm not going and rewiring her and making her completely different. No, she already had that built in. If she was going to eat the apple, that means that ability was already built in. It means she was able to eat the apple and God allowed it to be so. It's not like she was built. You can't do something that you're not built to do, so therefore that theory is flawed. You can't be built. You can't do something it's like a robot doing something that it's not actually programmed to do, which this not means malfunctioning. It means just simply going against code. That's the way that you're looking at it. It's like she went against her coding. So what? She was hacked by the snake. She was hacked by the snake. Damn, ain't that something? So then get angry at snakes. Let snakes suffer, not us. She was hacked by the snake. She got hacked, boys. She got hacked. It's anonymous. Snake works for anonymous. Okay, she got hacked, and therefore now that's why y'all have periods or something, and that's why we have the Adam's apple. Like that's why we can die. That's the story. Like it's just to think that motherfuckers actually believe that. Just think that I would believe that too. I would 100% believe that if I didn't have the access to all the information that I do now. It's just, it bothers me a little bit. It bothers me that I would genuinely believe that to be fucking true. It bothers me that I could have been born 2,000 years ago, or 1,000. And I'd have to believe that story is fucking true, and I'd die believing in that. And it's just, that bothers me. It bothers me.
So we are...
But I mean, shit, I'm likely gonna die believing something that, well, it's like, well, you're always gonna believe something that you can't know for certain. Right, I'm probably gonna die believing something that is not true, maybe, likely, right? I mean, it's not like I'm gonna know everything that is to be true, and like everything that I believe is necessarily true. But it's just like, that's so fundamental. Come on, dog. Like, if it's gonna be something that's not true, let it be something that's not so, unbelievably important. You know what I mean?
We are faced with a void of meaning. We live in a meaningless universe, and so how do we define what we are? What is the essence of being human?
What do you want?
Well, maybe the way that you're...
Want a job that
it.
I don't hate? Want to do something that matters?
I feel like this guy sometimes.
For Sartre...
Bro. The fuck, bro? So you... Maybe the way that... the way that you're thinking about it, right? Like, you're not supposed to be thinking about it. Like, the way that you're reasoning, it's like you're already using a tool that's not built to get the answer that you're looking for. It's like you're trying to build a spaceship with, like a Phillips tool. That's all they're given. It's just like, it's not the right tool, reasoning, meaning. That's just a human concept. And it's just like, well, you're kind of flawed from the beginning. You're not going to find objective meaning. You're screwed from the jump. There's no objective meaning. Why does that have to matter? Go find your own.
The essence is defined by our existence. What we essentially are is what we do, how we act in the world. As he puts it in Existentialism as a humanism, man is nothing else but that which he makes of himself. He says that there is no human nature, since there is no God to conceive of it. Man is not only that which he conceives himself to be, but also that which he wills himself to be. And since he conceives of himself only after he exists, just as he wills himself to be after being thrown into existence, man is not he exists, but also that which he
There
wills
is no
him.
human nature since there is no God to conceive of it. Man is not only that which he conceives himself to be, but also that which he wills himself to be, which is facticity and transcendence. And since he conceives of himself
To be. And since he
after-
conceives of himself only after he exists,
So if he can only conceive of himself after he exists, just as he wills himself to be, after being thrown into existence, man is nothing other than what he makes of himself. This is the first principle of existentialism.
just as he wills himself to be after being thrown into existence, man is nothing other than that which he makes of himself. This is the first principle of existentialism. So faced with the void of meaninglessness that nihilism presents, the existentialist answers that we must create our own meaning through our actions. There is no objective meaning, and so we create our own by the way we live our lives. That is the existentialist answer to the problem of nihilism. The absurd is an idea that we find in Kierkegaard, but is fully developed into a philosophy by Albert Camus in his book-length essay, The Myth of Sisyphus. Absurdism is his response to the problem of nihilism. He opens the myth of Sisyphus with one of the most iconic lines in the history of philosophy. There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy. In facing into the problem of nihilism, we're asking whether the lack of objective purpose means that life is not worth living. The absurd is key to Camus' framing of the question. The absurd is the meeting between two things: the cold, apathetic and meaningless objective reality on the one hand, and humanity's inherent drive for meaning on the other. The absurd arises from the meeting of our hunger for meaning with a universe that is meaningless. It is the tension between this drive for meaning and the impossibility of satisfying it. We are all immersed in this absurd tension, and according to
Why do
Camus,
we always want so meaning? Is it the fact that we're conscious? Does it just come with consciousness that you're gonna question things? Like, is it the high intelligence? Is it the consciousness? Why is that motherfuckers like want meaning so much? Well, it must be the intelligence, no? It must be the ability to reason. Because whatever you do, you're gonna ask yourself, why the fuck am I doing it? And if you can ask why the fuck you're doing anything, do animals get to ask why they do anything? They kind of just do, innit? They kind of just undergo many processes, I'd think. Right? That's what we think. We don't really know. But it's like, if you feel like they kind of just go through the processes and they don't really think about it too much, just kind of surviving most of the time, thinking on, working on emotion and instinct, and it's like, survival, blah, blah, blah. But when you don't need to focus too much on survival and you have all of these aspects, whether you start anything that you're doing, you then get to question, like, well, why am I really doing this, right? You're going to reason anything that you do out, and it's like, why do I do anything that I do? Right? When it's like, that's a problem that you reach when you have such a high level of intelligence where you can question the shit. Would it be better not to be able to question it? That's the question, isn't it? Would it be better to just not be able to question it at all? Because problems do arise when you can question things. Problems that you wouldn't really care about if you were just simply just worried about being, like worried about survival. But it's also like, well, that seems kind of boring to only just live, just to try to survive. It's just like, well, I don't know.
we have three alternatives for dealing with this problem. The first option is to commit suicide. If life has no meaning, then why keep living? Camus finds this option unsatisfactory. He points out that there is no more meaning in death than there is in life, and that it simply evades the problem. The second option is to take a leap of faith. To believe in some doctrine or ideology that tells us that there is a meaning we must have faith in. This can be a religion like Christianity or an ideology like Marxism. We swallow a pill of bullshit, and in return we get reprieve from the absurd.
I was talking about Marxism, yeah. It's like an ideology, something to believe in. I'm not stupid.
Camus terms this option philosophical suicide. Camus finds these two options insincere, and so he proposes a third option: to embrace the insatiable tension, to embrace the absurd, to lean into it. This third option is absurdism. Absurdism is a rebellion against meaninglessness. We do not escape from the absurd through death or philosophical suicide. We meet the absurd as it is, without escape and with integrity, and we maintain the tension of the absurd in us without turning away. He incites us to a life without consolation, a life characterized by acute consciousness of and rebellion against its own mortality and its limits.
My name is Manelis Brito. I will be attending Louisiana State University, and I don't
Why do
hold
I care? I'm
I got
sorry.
in contact.
I'm sorry, Manelis. I think that's your name. I'm glad, but I got a video to get to. I don't care, okay? I'm sorry.
Camus looks at the existentialists and regrets what he ultimately sees as their escapism and irrationality, saying that they deify what crushes them and find reason to hope escapism and irrationality. Camus looks at the existentialists and regrets what he ultimately sees as their escapism and irrationality, saying that they deify what crushes them and find reason to hope in what impoverishes them. That forced hope is religious in all of them. Absurdism.
Sorry, why does he think that? They deify what crushes them and find reason to hope in what impoverishes them. That forced hope is religious and all. Ooh, so you're saying that has connotation, that has like implication, that has like. So you're saying that's like believing in something? That's because this is what you're saying that they're doing. Motherfucker, you're saying that about existentialists? Damn, I thought existentialism had it right. But now you bring this to the question. What if they are deifying what crushes them and find reason to hope in what impoverishes them? That forced hope is religious in all of them. But is that really what they're doing? Are they deifying what crushes them? Well, you gotta, I mean, he's saying that because, like, Nietzsche, he it's almost like a fun thing to believe what he says. Like, maybe Camus doesn't think that the answer is really fun. He realizes, like, how kind of depressing a lot of it is. And he realizes that, like, the answer to it he feels by nature shouldn't be fun. It should be probably a pretty depressing answer. And maybe what the existentialists come up with finding your own meaning, it just isn't depressing enough. It just seems like it's kind of like another cop-out. Like, it's another one of those things where it's just nice to believe and it's fun to believe. And it's, at least this one's believable. It's not like religion. It's like, well, this one, you can make your own. But why? I want to know why he says this. Like, all they say is, well, you can make your own meaning. Is that not true? You can make your own meaning. They're not saying anything about objective meaning. They're just saying, well, you have this subjective freedom to go choose. I don't know. What is he disagreeing with here? Reason to hope in what empowers them. Then forced hope is religious in all of them. What?
Hope in what impoverishes them. That forced hope is religious in all of them. Absurdism means holding aloof of the temptation to create meaning or to buy into some meaning. The absurdist rebels against this false satisfaction to create meaning.
Absurdism means holding aloof of the temptation to create meaning or to buy into some meaning. Well, how is that an aloof by the temptation to create meaning? That just seems like it's abstinence. That just seems like you're just a motherfucker that's too concerned with not having sex. It just seems like you're one of those abstaining motherfuckers. Ain't nothing wrong with creating some meaning. That's subjective. Maybe meaning in the way that you think of it, like if he was if they're destined to do it, or like if they were born to do it, because then maybe he's talking about a specific meaning, like the specificness of the word meaning. Like, this was meant by some creator, right? Like, this was meant to be by the universe somehow, some way. The things came together to align and meaning. Maybe that's what he means, but so like, well, I don't think that's what he means. Why does? Of course, you'd have a temptation to do it, but just because you have the temptation to do something, doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. But that is what a lot of people do have skepticism about. That's what they do have a lot of shit about, is how people do things that they have temptations to do, and that's how you fall into traps like religion. You have the temptation to fulfill that intrinsic existential dread, that existential anxiety and the crisis of like being like, oh my god, I'm alive. What is the meaning to all of this? And it's like, well, religion is that, buying into some meaning. But to create your own meaning, I don't see anything wrong with that. Of course, I feel like, I do see why that there's a temptation, but I don't think that should stop that from being applicable, though. Or is it like by nature of figuring out the truth, because there's temptation there, that is the answer that you would arrive at naturally because of temptation. You're not arriving there because of truth. You're arriving there because that's what you want to arrive at. So therefore, it's not the type of project I'm interested in doing. It's not the type of truth I'm interested in finding. Absurdism. Oh, okay. I think I'm starting to get it.
Or to buy into some meaning. The absurdist rebels against this false satisfaction of our hunger for meaning. Instead, Camus says that we must hold the tension, hold the space of the absurd meaninglessness. As he puts it, the only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. Camus' philosophy of absurdism is best captured in an image, that of the Greek.
But then you have the temptation of just rebelling and just being like, man, fuck all this. Ain't that a temptation in itself to just realize that there's no objective truth to it all, so you're just gonna say fuck all this? So then you arrive in the same place, Camus. You arrive at the same thing. Talking about something, I'm not gonna give in to some temptation. You, like I said, you're just another one of those motherfuckers that just doesn't want to have sex. Like, of course motherfuckers have sex because they want to, because it's in their nature. That doesn't mean that it's horrible. It's not like religion, necessarily, right? Kind of biased when I say that. But it's like, it's not, I don't really see it as being, like, you can make your own meaning. Why is that a bad thing? You act like they're being deceived. Motherfuckers sometimes need meaning to keep going in this life. I'm not gonna blame you for searching your own meaning. Now that I absolutely will not say anything about. I think everybody should find their own meaning to this. You're just a motherfucker that, like, I think you might be going too far in the wrong direction, Camus.
Mythological figure Sisyphus. Sisyphus was the founder of the Greek city Corinth. He was well known to be the craftiest of all humans, and craftier than Zeus himself. When he was sent to the underworld, he managed to trick his way out. In some stories, he tricks the god of death Thanatos, in other stories Hades, and in other stories Persephone. He escapes and returns to the earth and revels in the pleasures of the world before eventually being returned to the underworld, where he is punished to roll a boulder up a hill and watch it roll back down again, at which point he returns to the bottom of the hill and repeats the process quite literally ad infinitum. There's 3 reasons why Sisyphus is Camus' icon of absurdism. There's his love of life seen by his cheating his way out of the underworld and returning to enjoy the pleasures of the world once again, which is strongly antithetical to the life-denying brand of nihilism. A second reason is Sisyphus' punishment. The absurdity of rolling a rock up the hill only to see it roll back down again, and being forced every time to roll it back up again, knowing the inevitable outcome. Sisyphus is stuck in an eternal cycle of absurdity. The third reason Sisyphus is Camus' embodiment of absurdism is that he is a rebel. He outwits death and the gods to return to life. He rebels against the fundamental order of things. He rebels against the gods. All of these points come together in Camus' great line that closes out his book. I leave Sisyphus at the foot of the mountain. One always finds one's burden again, but Sisyphus teaches the higher fidelity that negates the gods and raises rocks. He too concludes that all is well. This universe henceforth without a master.
Go into how Sisyphus can keep doing what he's doing. Like, that's really what finding your meaning is like that sort of kind of necessary thing for people to keep doing what they're doing. Now, what if somebody were to argue that religion might be necessary? Well, I don't think so. I think religion is not what that. It's not this the thing that is what meaning is. It's just one of the things where you can find meaning. Therefore, it's not going to be as important as meaning itself. Like, meaning itself, that's important. That's necessary, I think, to a lot of people. Maybe to some people, maybe they'll be fine without it. They could live. And I guess if the point is to keep on living. But he does give you the option of suicide. It's just like, well, if you can't handle the non-meaning, go commit suicide. But he wouldn't recommend that. But he does see that as I guess maybe a valid enough option. He just thinks it's a cop-out. He doesn't like it. He doesn't think that it's ideal. He doesn't think it's a good option. Because, well, you're just kind of, I don't know. But didn't he talk about Sisyphus having meaning? Didn't he talk about, like, being in flow state? Not being flow state, but it's just like, yeah, the universe henceforth without a master seems to him neither sterile nor futile. Each atom of that stone, each mineral flake of the night-filled mountain in itself forms a world. Yeah, he found purpose in the task itself. That's what it is. That's meaning, though. So therefore, you're not against meaning, because you realize Sisyphus, to keep, like, at least the way he's writing it, you'd think he's writing it like Sisyphus thinks like a human. And therefore, he'd have to find meaning to keep doing it. But I mean, Sisyphus isn't really human. He's kind of a god, isn't it? Or whatever.
Seems to him neither sterile nor futile. Each atom of that stone, each mineral flake of that night-filled mountain, in itself forms a world. The struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy.
That's what.
So absurdism is not
It's
about
the same shit because you're talking about happiness. Because you're talking about he's happy to do it, and therefore he can keep on living because he's happy to do this task, which we all would find dreadful, but he can find happiness in it. Ain't that what everybody else is talking about? Ain't that what you were just criticizing? But you talk about Sisyphus like he's doing the same thing that you criticize other people for doing. But you realize the necessity of it. You realize, well, maybe he'd commit suicide if he didn't find meaning in pushing that rock. You have to realize that. And it's like, well, can we make the cutoff point there? Can we say that suicide should never be an option? Should never be something worth considering, maybe? Like, if we were to never consider that a valid option, never something worth considering, never something that anybody should ever do, and we're completely against it, wouldn't we say that we'll accept, right? That we must allow it to pass. We must say, well, we have to allow people to make their own meaning. We'll allow that no matter what our goal is, no matter what we're trying to find, objective truth, whatever, we have to allow it, right? We might not allow religion, we might not allow any of this because we see how it's just people, their temptations to do all of this, to feel this, they're not as free. I don't think you're not as free if you make your own meaning. I honestly don't think that that's making you any less free, and that's really what an existential, like somebody like Albert Camus kind of falls into that. You're looking to be the most free. I don't think finding your own meaning is going to therefore make you not free. I'm not going to hold you. That's my opinion on it, though.
about finding a meaning to life, but about rebelling against the absurdity of life. It's about standing aloof of the demand to find a meaning, rebelling against the absurd game itself, and affirming life for what it is. It's a struggle with integrity, because this struggle towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. Faced with the crisis of meaninglessness that nihilism presents, the absurdist doesn't throw a tantrum and kill themselves. The absurdist doesn't grab onto the nearest life raft and commit philosophical suicide. The absurdist affirms the struggle and enjoys life for what it is. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. So to summarize, nihilism is the realization that there is no objective meaning. Existentialism answers this by saying,
to a point where you're just like, well, why do people want to enjoy themselves? Fuck you. You have an innate, longing to enjoy things. You shouldn't enjoy anything. That's just because you want to enjoy things. No. It's all an illusion in your mind. You shouldn't be enjoying anything. You don't know that to be true. You don't know if that's what you really should be living. Doing that. Maybe you're not as free because you enjoy things. Maybe you shouldn't enjoy anything. It's like, well, what are you getting at, Camus? But I see what you're saying. I do kind of see I do see what he's saying. But it's just like, don't go too far in that direction, I feel like he might be threading a bit close. I'm not sure he's gone over, but he's getting kind of close. But he's right, though. He does have a point, though. It's just something that one of those things like, ooh, It's very complicated. It's a very complicated thing to understand.
His life for what it is. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. So to summarize, nihilism is the realization that there is no objective meaning. Existentialism answers this by saying that it is possible to create our own meaning through the choices we make in our lives. Absurdism, on the other hand, says that we shouldn't seek to create our own meaning, but we should stare into the face of the absurd and rebel against this meaninglessness. That's everything that I wanted to cover on this episode of The Living Philosophy. If you've enjoyed it...
You just said what they said 2.0. What do you mean? You just said the same shit that you said it in a different way with the same kind of result. Like, you really make no difference with the absurdism and nihilism. It's kind of two sides of the same thing. Like, no. Well, yeah, both of you. I agree with both. I think both of those are valid. I'm not saying no, like, they're not true. Like, no, I don't subscribe to anything. I don't identify as anything. I don't put labels on myself. But I absolutely like both of those. I absolutely like both absurdism and existentialism. I love the type of things that they talk about. I'm not a nihilist, though. I can tell you that for sure. Not about nihilism. But would we have the innate drive to not choose nihilism? Because if we did, we'd kill ourselves. And we realize that there are too much implications of that. So therefore, we couldn't ever accept nihilism. But what if it's the truest thing? What if they really do have it right? but we just simply couldn't possibly, in any form, way, shape, or form, really give in to that ideology, no matter how true it was, because it'd just be too dark. And maybe we're not built to deal with that darkness. Food for thought. But no, nonetheless, I'm not a nihilist. I don't think that's the case, right? But, I mean, shit. Book to read. Sisyphus happy. Wow. Great book. Great video from him. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Leave a like if you enjoyed. I made it too long. Let me know in the comment sections that I made it too long, that I talked too much. I'm sorry. Subscribe. See you guys in the next one. Yes, sir.